humans broke the game.
Was made in partnership with CuriosityStream.
The hell is that? TierZoo. TierZoo. My bad. Woolly rhinoceros? What the hell is this supposed to be? This ain't a game. Oh, it's a critical hit on the woolly rhinoceros victory issue. Okay. Okay, what?
Humans are the current #1 build in the meta.
What was that whole intro?
Supreme. In fact, at first they were one of the least powerful builds in the meta, and it took several buffs, refinements, and tweaks before the human became even remotely threatening within its home server of Africa. So today, we're going to break down all the different variations of the human build throughout the history of Outside and discuss their unique traits, stats, and abilities, with the hope of demonstrating why some of these skill tree choices worked, while others couldn't compete. The first players to unlock the human class were a group of African primate mains that switched from the knuckle-walking quadrupedal build to a bipedal one. It's important to note that at this point, they hadn't sacrificed their arboreal mobility perks yet, and relied
Was that
on their
RuneScape
ability to
text?
climb to escape danger. The top
Nice.
tiers at the time were all large terrestrial mammal builds far too strong for Australopithecus to challenge them, so their only option was to avoid them.
Current
It might seem
objective.
counterintuitive to switch to a
Survive.
bipedal build when your playstyle is centered around the arboreal zone, but the reason this was so crucial was because it freed up their hands to be able to carry items back to their tree. This was the first
Oh
step
my
towards
God.
the cooperative, loot-sharing playstyle
Mozambique,
that
yeah.
is so dominant in the current meta. Now, you might be surprised to learn that the devs have nerfed humans in the past. The tree-dwelling strategy was seen as a cheap way to avoid dealing with other players, and so the devs decided to reduce the number and size of trees in the Africa server.
Okay.
This forced humans to ditch their arboreal strategy and spec into ground-based abilities. And for a while, humans got absolutely bodied by other players.
That is
With the ability
RuneScape.
to use items and create tools. The other builds in the region, like saber-tooths and giant hyenas, were far too strong for humans to deal with. They
Defend.
had to rely solely
Whoa.
on the thieving skill to get by. But this disadvantage was
Thieving
slightly mitigated
skill.
by their newfound ability to crack bone using tools, letting them scavenge for marrow after big cats had finished with the kill. Once humanity had scraped together enough evolution points by scavenging, they finally got to level up some of their
Oh my
stats and give
God.
themselves the ability to survive by hunting rather than
This is
scavenging.
insanity.
They spec'd into longer legs and less body hair, allowing them to finally unlock one of the human's most powerful signature abilities, sweating.
Sweating.
Sweating allows the player to recharge their stamina even while moving, whereas other builds are forced to stop and use the pant ability to recharge stamina.
Oh my
They
God.
could justify putting all of their evolution points into mobility rather than power, because by this point they'd also leveled up their crafting enough to make spears, the staple best-in-slot two-handed weapon until the invention of gunpowder. A sustainable source of meat is worth
Game.
a lot more
Okay.
than fruit or scavenged marrow.
Good references, though.
Humans finally start leveling up their intelligence to a truly staggering level, promoting both cooperation and innovation. But once again, nerfs were on the way. Just before the Ice Age balance patch hit,
This man just said the Ice Age balance pass.
a faction of the human player base migrated servers, establishing themselves in the Europe server. Most of the others stayed in Africa. The Ice Age patch hit, and it led to two very different changes in the two servers that the humans were playing on. In Europe, as you probably expect, the overworld temperature dropped and ice damage became a threat. The humans,
Ice
as well
damage.
as most of the other top players there, spec'd into bulkier builds that could survive the cold better. In short, the update didn't really affect them too badly. This group became known as the Neanderthal faction.
The
The humans that remained in
Neanderthal
Africa,
faction.
now known as the Sapiens faction, faced a much worse update.
Yikes.
Ironically, during the Ice Age, Africa got hotter and drier. The large herbivores humans had such a good matchup against all left, and the human player base in Africa was reduced to the brink of extinction, with player counts below 10,000.
Old school
They survived by
RuneScape.
leveling up their
Fishing
efficiency,
level.
scavenging for shellfish and other low XP
Oh,
sources.
they're playing the
as they,
Pokemon,
made
too.
their escape
That's
from
crazy.
Africa. When they finally escaped Africa, they were finally back in a server that they could thrive
I
in,
believe it.
but they had competition. Neanderthals had the highest stats of any human build in history. They had
Nice,
bigger
go
brains, more
go
girthy bodies,
Neanderthals.
stronger muscles, just undeniably a more viable build compared to Sapiens. So by this point I'm guessing you're wondering, well, if Neanderthals were more powerful, Why is it that eventually the Neanderthals lost the faction war to the Sapiens? It turns out that their physical superiority was actually their downfall. Neanderthals and Sapiens had a very different hunting strategy when it comes to taking down large herbivores. Neanderthals had the strength to defeat them with melee combat, and had the defense and HP to be able to take a hit or two even from some of the Ice Age's strongest herbivore builds. They were also fast enough to be able to close the distance between themselves and their targets. This all sounds awesome.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Detail in this plan that you might have noticed. Since Neanderthals were fit enough to take on these herbivores face to face, they didn't have to invent ranged weapons. Sapiens, on the other hand, would get one shot if they tried to take on behemoths like mammoths or woolly rhinos.
Going after a rabbit.
Thankfully, even though their brains weren't as big as Neanderthals, it was still more than enough for them to be able to use the aforementioned crafting skill to create the first ranged weapon, the atlatl. Atlatls are a relatively simple yet effective item that allows the user to
I feel like this is very informational.
This was critical for the survival of Sapiens.
But it's a funny, you know, it's in a humorous way.
But also stay out of range of a potentially devastating counterattack. Sapiens also tended to have bigger party sizes. Neanderthals were less social and tended to stick to small, tight-knit groups, while Sapiens formed much larger communities that could control much larger territories. Eventually, even though Neanderthals were the better fighters, they were the ones failing to find enough XP to survive. And this is where their physical might became a huge detriment. The bigger you are, the more energy you need to survive. And so Neanderthals' strong, powerful bodies eventually became unsustainable. Most of them were defeated in combat or starved, although a few did end up actually switching factions and joining with the Sapiens. But finally, after defeating their most dangerous opponent, humans were free to dominate the game as the new top tiers. They mastered several key advanced techniques such as agriculture, archery, and sailing, allowing them to push the meta far past what other builds ever thought possible. You'd think that they would all work together to rule the game, but unfortunately many of them ended up engaging in PvP with each other.
Yeah.
It kinda makes sense given that other players are hardly even a challenge, but nonetheless, infighting is their biggest weakness right now. Anyways, hopefully that gives you a better background on the history of the game's most overpowered build.
Crazy. What is this?
Oh, by the way, I bet many of you noticed the incredible footage of ancient hominids that I used in this video.
Yeah.
This footage is from a brand new documentary called Out of the Cradle,
Out of
which was
the
animated
Cradle.
by Square Enix, the masterminds behind the Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest video games. It's available right now on CuriosityStream.
TierZoo
has over 2,400 titles, including many of my personal.
We'll let him play the rad out.
Like Walking with Dinosaurs, Ice Age Giants, and of course, Out of the Cradle. The subscription is only $2.99 a month, but if you go to curiositystream.com/TierZoo right now and use the promo code TierZoo, you can get a whole.
Yeah, that's Caesar.
So please, go check out Out of the Cradle.
That's Caesar.
I can genuinely say that it's got some of the best animation of any prehistoric documentary I've seen. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and thanks especially to my patrons on Patreon. Until next time, good luck out there.
Good video, man. Very informational. I'm happy to see that humans are the ultimate player of the game. We won, I guess. I don't know. All right, that was TierZoo. How humans broke the game. Subscribe to TierZoo. They made this video. They made it possible for me to react to this video. Thank you, TierZoo. Okay.